The first leg between Bayern and Real Madrid went exactly how I expected it to go. Like literally to the T. When you look at both these managers, when you look at both these squads, the way they both want to play football and execute their ideas, I thought that this first leg of the Champions League semifinal was basically to a T how both sides operate, or in terms of how they want to operate. When you look at Real Madrid, we know what these guys are about. They're almost the most fascinating team to tactically analyze because they're so different to every other side on the planet in terms of how they line up for a football game. And I think that's best illustrated by the City games of the last few years, and B, this first leg. Ancelotti is not too fussed about having a compact, structured side that plays a certain ideology or a certain philosophy that they are going to execute game after game after game. We know that about Real Madrid. And I saw this fascinating tweet last night, almost calling Real Madrid's tactical setup like a living, breathing organism. And instead of trying to find the patterns of play or the set style in which they're looking to execute, it's almost worth more as an analyst or as someone who wants to learn about the game, and more so looking at the relationships between each of the players, whether it's Fede and Vasquez on the right, or how Fede interacts with Kroos, or how the two wingers slash forwards kind of interact with a Jude Bellingham who will decide at times to play deeper or go. Like it's really fascinating watching how just as a team, Real Madrid's shape and how they execute their play kind of shifts throughout a 90-minute game. They're absolutely fascinating to watch. And it's so rare in today's game, I feel, when you look at the Peps, the De Zerbis, the Klopps, the Thomas Tuchel, who is almost the antithesis on the other end in today's game, or in last night's game, excuse me. They are just one of one. They are a unique footballing side. And I thought that in a game like today, this would be very similar to the away leg that they played against City. Now, obviously, Bayern Munich is not as strong a team as City, both Tuchel not being Pep, and both Bayern Munich's players not being City's players. So I expected Bayern to kind of come into this game and dominate more than they did in the Arsenal game. But I also expected Madrid to kind of manage the game through 10 to 15-minute intervals like they so often do in these big European ties. And that's exactly what they did on the night. They didn't start the game the greatest. I think Bayern within 5-10 minutes could have had 2 goals very easily between Musiala, Sané, Harry Kane. They all missed their own, you could call, gilt-edged chances. But this is really what Madrid do, kind of feel out the game. They almost treat it like a playoff basketball game where they know it's game one. They know the first 15 minutes is kind of like a game one, if you want to call it that. Feel out the opposition, see what the game state is kind of looking like, concede some chances if you have to, and pick your moments to strike. No one does this better than Madrid in terms of they're happy to defend for 15-minute intervals. Then in the next 5, kind of get their foot on the ball and kind of see what the game is saying. And then bide their time, wait for their best players to kind of pick their moments. And in a flash, that's kind of what they did. The first goal that Vinicius scores is... I don't think I can do it justice, to be honest with you. And it's going to sound horrible as a YouTuber. I'm actually going to say, to find the best piece of analysis that I saw on this game, I would go over to James Alcott's channel. And I'm going to link it in the description below because he had a whole video kind of breaking down the game as well. But his analysis on the Toni Kroos pass to Vinicius, on the naked eye, it just looks like a terrifically weighted pass from Toni Kroos, a really smart play from Vinicius to kind of drag Kim Min-jae out and then occupy the space he's just left in behind with tremendous speed and devastating finishing. And then also a boneheaded decision from Kim to track the runner instead of just kind of letting him pick it up in a less dangerous position. But really, when you look at the way James Alcott has broken this down, I tweeted it earlier today, in fact, it's like the analysis that you'd expect to see from a former player on TV. It's that really genius. But I'll link that video. The best I can really say is this is Real Madrid in a nutshell, man. Honestly, no one picks their moments to be decisive like this team. And it came from probably their 2 standout players on the night. Toni Kroos, right? This guy is he's just brilliant, isn't he? Honestly, wow. Like, me and Faisal were talking, right, last night on SDS, saying, what is really Toni Kroos's peak in his career? Is there like a point in his career where he's just kind of like been at the top in particular compared to the rest of his career? It's really hard for a player of that stature to say no, because typically when you talk about the best players of all time, they might be consistently brilliant, but there's always a peak for them. But with Kroos, it's really just consistent excellence for 10 years. We're approaching 15 years, damn near. So when we see these performances on the biggest European stages, it shouldn't be a surprise for us anymore because we've seen it so many times. But I thought yesterday in particular, he absolutely ran the show for the time he was on the pitch for Real Madrid. In fact, I was very shocked that he was kind of the one decided to be sacrificed for Luka Modric later into the game, because I thought he was Real Madrid's best midfielder. In the first half in particular, I don't know what he ended up with on the night, but in the first half had the most passes completed out of either team, only misplaced one. And it's just really it's the quality of his passes as well too, right? Because you can really at times fluke 90% pass accuracy, 95% pass accuracy. But more important, in my opinion, than Kroos's pass accuracy is his pass appreciation in terms of the weight of his pass, the angles at which his passes come from, how he finds his teammates, the angles in which he allows his teammates to kind of receive the pass in, and the pass to Vinicius, right? Again, it's brilliant, forward play really from Vinicius, which that's another bow in his what is it, in his arrow, if you want to call it that. I'm not 100% sure the saying, but it's really just another attribute that Vinicius has downloaded, if you want to call it that, in this new evolution in his career. Every single year Vinicius is improving at a crazy rapid rate, and this year has kind of become being more of a forward rather than a winger, and that was just brilliant forward play. The intelligence to kind of come in, and then run to the space. Look, Kim is susceptible there. He really shouldn't be as naive in that kind of situation, but as James, like I said, brings up in his video, there was just so much more to it than just a come in, come out. Kroos though, I think, look, that pass is just brilliant, man. And I always find it funny on these big European nights, right? Maybe people are watching Kroos for the first time this season, second, third time this season, and it's games like today where it's like, you might be an all-timer, guys. I can't lie. Kroos, he might be better than Rodri or something. Look, Rodri is brilliant, but Kroos is a big man in this game. He's been doing this for 10 years straight now, bro. Like, unbelievable player, and it's 1-0 Real Madrid. But I opened the video by saying this game went exactly as I expected it to. That was for Real Madrid, and it was for Bayern Munich. And I keep telling people, stop underestimating this Bayern team. Whatever you think about them, whatever you think you've learned about them in the Bundesliga, erase it from your mind. Because in Europe, they're a totally different beast. And in my opinion, that comes down to one man and one man only. And that is Thomas Tuchel. Now, there should be a video on this channel coming out in the next few hours, tonight, probably at the latest, on me and Lyes Bouzidi thoughts as this guy potentially being a future Manchester United candidate. Now, not to spoil the video that's going to be coming out, but the answer quite simply is I would be very, very happy with the move. This is one of the finest tacticians in European football for the last 5, 6, 7 years. Not even an exaggeration when I say that. Giving Thomas Tuchel a week to prepare for a single knockout match against a European team is like giving Batman like heavy artillery, giving him like a bazooka. You're aiming a world-class strategist, or you're arming him with just ultimate tools, man. Like, he's so different in terms of, again, the Peps, the Artetas, if you will, the Klopps. These are all brilliant managers in their own right, and you could argue they're better managers than Tuchel. But when you look at them, what they do so well is they look at their team and they say, how can I give my side the best possible advantage to win on the night? And that, in their own way, is elevating his own team's strengths. We're going to have all of the ball. We're going to make sure our wingers have maximum width at all times to attack their fullbacks. We're going to give as many chances as we can for our striker. And that's fine. That's modern day management. I'm not knocking it. What makes Tuchel so brilliant is he does that as well too. I'm not going to pretend like he doesn't give his attackers any chances or he gives his defenders no chance. I'm not trying to say that. But what he does more than that is he looks at the other team and he says, how can I nullify that team's biggest strengths? And how can I maximize that team's biggest weaknesses? He's done it so many times. It's ridiculous. Whether it was PSG, whether it was with Bayern even last season. And I always say last season, in my opinion, I think he was on a level playing field with Pep Guardiola from a coaching standpoint in those two legs. I truly believe that. I'm not going to look at the analysis bias, if you want, or sorry, the result-based bias in that, right? Like, Bayern lost the tie, but it was truly down to individual moments and individual errors and brilliance from both teams that, in my opinion, separated that tie. When it comes down to how both sides set their team up with the best chance to win, I think Tuchel gave his side as much of a chance to win against that Pep team as he possibly could. This game was no different, and the tie against Arsenal was no different. But I will say the second half, he made a change. He made two changes, to be fair. One of them was bringing in Guerrero for Goretzka. And I'm not sure if that was down to injury, but I thought Guerrero, just like in the second leg against Arsenal, had a really, really strong showing. Guerrero, and just a really good player, man. Honestly, technically clean, IQ on top. Like, he's just a really nice player to have. He can play in so many different positions. The other day he was playing as a left winger against Arsenal. Today he's almost playing as more of an interior. He's played at left back before. He's played, I think he's played at right back in the past as well too. Just a really, really good, fundamentally sound player. I think that substitution paid dividends. And I also think we did two things. One, he brought Leroy Sané onto the right and he brought in Jamal Musiala onto the left. But also, he really stretched out the pitch massively And within 5 to 10 minutes, I think that change, again, paid dividend. Both of them crucial to both the goals Bayern Munich would score in the first 12 minutes of the second half, as they went from 1-0 down to 2-1 up within the first 12 minutes of the second half. Ridiculous. The first goal is, I think it was Sané who scored it, correct? Yeah. I think TNT, it was them who was showing like the passing pattern for how that ball landed into Leroy Sané's feet. And it starts from literally the left back on the far left side of the pitch, swing it to the center back, swing it to the center back, swing it to, I think, a midfielder, which then found its way to Leroy Sané, which then he found himself just perfectly isolated 1v1 against Ferland Mendy with Joshua Kimmich bombing up the right-hand side. And all of a sudden, Ferland Mendy doesn't have a midfielder really there to back him up with Kimmich. Rodrigo, I know, is busting a gut to kind of get to him. And you're left with Leroy Sané, who is one of the most devastating 1v1 wide threats in Europe. His strides in that move are just so powerful and so devastating. And it was almost like a flashback of like the Manchester City Leroy Sané. And it hasn't always been like that, in my opinion, since he joined Bayern. At times, he's almost been playing as like an interior. But today, he was playing full out as like a wide winger. And the way he just brutally, decisively, and that's my favorite word when it comes to wingers. I love wingers who are just direct and just understand the assignment and just rip their fullback. Like sometimes I feel like we're overthinking at times. He's getting double teamed, or where's his fullback for the support, or where's his midfielder for the support, or pass it back to my fullback so we can restart the move. Look, man, I'm old school. I love seeing a winger just look at his fullback and say, allow me to have this dance. Everyone else, it's almost like basketball, clear out. I want this guy one-on-one. And Leroy Sané just like ripped apart Ferland Mendy, cuts inside, devastatingly unleashes a strike past Lunin, who on the night had a really good game. Again, like Lunin is, I don't know if Courtois comes back and just immediately snatches this position back from him, but if that's the case, a lot of teams could do a lot worse than looking at what Lunin has done in this Champions League and La Liga for Real Madrid and saying, hey, come be a first choice keeper over here full time, because he should hold his head up high. I think he's been really, really good this campaign. But just like that, in a flash, the scene changes. Leroy Sané gets Bayern back into the game, and not even 4 minutes later, again, the ball finds its way to Jamal Musiala. And I actually think, if I remember the goal, how it went correctly, I think it's really good work from Thomas Muller off the ball to kind of allow Jamal Musiala again the chance to isolate his fullback, which was Vasquez on the night, which was again a big matchup that I looked at before a ball was kicked and said, okay, if Bayern Munich are going to have any strengths or are going to have any success in this tie, they really need to look at the individual matchups and look at where they can gain an advantage. And one of them, 100%, has to be Jamal Musiala in wide positions against Vasquez, because you're looking at arguably the best one-on-one dribbler in the game versus, with all due respect, a makeshift right back in Vasquez. And Vasquez he's had some good campaigns at right back, but he is a makeshift right back. If I'm Musiala and I look at my opponent and I see Vasquez, it's just like the Sané situation. Everyone clear out. Allow me to have this dance. I'm a winger. I'm going to rip you a new one. That's what it says on the can. I'm sorry, guys. This is how it used to be. This is how it used to be before we started having these inverted wingers who are basically just like waiting for balls to fall into the box to them, or wingers who want to just like tiptoe before passing it back to their fullback. This is wing play. Brilliant. Rips Vasquez a new one. Vasquez has no chance. Honestly, brings him down. Penalty to Bayern. Harry Kane, I have to give him massive credit. On the night, I actually thought he was really good. I think his hold-up play was really good. I think dropping deep, we know he can do that kind of stuff. That's Harry Kane to a T. So I'm not going to give him too much credit for that. That's what he does. Like, I'm expecting Harry Kane to do that. I think he had a really good game. Maybe, I think there was a first half, I think he should have scored. And second half as well, too. I think there was an opportunity. Maybe it's a half chance on face value, where I think he takes an extra touch that allows it kind of to become a physical matchup against Rudiger, and he's never going to win that against him. But I think he was good. I think Bayern, to be honest with you, man, I think both halves, if you look at it like over 90 minutes, I think for 70 minutes of it, Bayern were the better team, in my opinion. Maybe that might not be accurate, but off just watching it one time, I think over 90 minutes, Bayern were the better team for 70 of it. I think in possession, I think in nullifying Real Madrid's biggest threats, I think in creating chances, I think in managing the game, I think Bayern were the better team. But against Real Madrid, it often doesn't matter if in all those metrics you are the better team or not. Most of the time it doesn't. It's just as simple as that. Let's look at a few of those Real Madrid players. I think Vinicius on the night has proven that when you're talking about the best players in the world, and I'm not talking about, top 10, top 15, top 20, he's cleared that stratosphere a long time ago. I think when you're talking about top 5 in the world, it's beginning to grow very uncomfortable as to how high Vinicius ranks amongst most attacking players. Mbappe for me is number 1. That number 2 position, if you want to call it that, and this might be barbershop talk, right? Because it really comes down to what you like, form, like fit in with the team that they're on. Like it really comes down to those kinds of things. So what I'm gonna say is not really like set in stone. It's just my opinion. But I think it is rapidly becoming what could be seen as a consensus opinion that Vinicius might be the second best player in the world. I don't know if I'm crazy to say that, but I think he's rapidly approaching that kind of territory. This guy is sort of in a 1v1 battle against Mbappe to kind of claim the title as Mr. Champions League. Because these two, for the last 4 or 5 years, and maybe Mbappe has been doing it a season or two longer than Vinicius, but they are now making this competition their playground. Every single tie, home or away, they're making sure that their impact on the GA stat sheet, if you want to call it that, is being felt. Vinicius, I think that the stat is like since they won the Champions League, he has either scored or assisted in every single tie that he's played in. That's ridiculous. I think at this point, he's scored as many goals in knockout games as he has in group stage games. He's not just stat padding against Apoel and Shakhtar in the group stage. He's making himself known against the likes of City, now Bayern. He's done it against PSG and Liverpool. And like I said earlier, he is quickly becoming the most improved player every single year. Every single year, he's almost like downloading new data. He's almost like learning new sides of his game and improving and improving and improving. From a guy who was once like this real, as real as you can get, out and out winger, to now becoming like almost like a narrow forward who can still take on his man. Let's not get it twisted. The movement in which he shows and the skill in which he shows for what ended up being a penalty for Real Madrid is just, again, it's X factor. And I don't want to make this about Arsenal, right? But this is why for me, Arsenal were never going to win the Champions League this year, because the action that Sané has against Mendy, the action that Musiala has against Vasquez, and the action that Vinicius has in both goals, Arsenal have very few, if any, players who are able to replicate that level of individual brilliance. People call them game breakers. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's what I say about X Factor, right? And to be honest, at one point last year, and he might still have it, but at one point last year in particular, I was starting to believe that Saka was kind of like growing into that kind of player. X Factor for me is when your team's not playing well, when the system is kind of failing, when your individual players around you aren't really giving you the support you need, when the structure is kind of failing, when everyone's not playing well, when you're not playing well, damn it. What can you kind of do on the ball as an individual to change the game for your team? None of this, oh, the system is failing. Oh, none of this, oh, he got shut down, or oh, the manager's tactics got found out. All that can be true. But the elite level players in the world that have, again, that individual X factor can make a moment out of nothing. Vinicius, you could argue he has the most X factor in Europe right now. Maybe I would argue an Mbappe over him, but you could make the argument that Vinicius is the king of that. Give him even an inch and he'll take a mile, bro. He'll take a mile. Like, even there was an instance on the left-hand side, right, where he picks up the ball and he's almost double teamed. And again, if this was a Grealish, for example, or maybe a Martinelli, or a Sancho, or I'm just trying to think of wingers who aren't really like that kind of player that I'm describing. They probably spin out, right? Like there's two guys in front of them. They probably with their right foot spin out, they're protecting the ball, and then play it backwards. That's what most coaches would instruct you to do. Vinicius has the ability and the confidence as well too to pick up the ball and do an inside out elastico that evades both defenders, and either they let him go and he's through, or they foul him and they get a dangerous position. But again, that's not Ancelotti's tactics right there. That's not, oh, is Ferland Mendy giving him enough support? That's not, oh, is Cruz kind of tucking in to give him that pass on the interior? That's literally Vinicius saying, everyone get out of the way. I'm going to make something happen. That's what the best players do. So Vinicius, I can't compliment enough. Obviously, tremendous bottle as well, just like Kane did, if I didn't mention that already, to take the penalty. Big crucial moment. Gets them a draw. And look, again, I say the game went exactly as I thought. I thought Bayern were going to nullify Real Madrid's biggest threats. And to be fair, they didn't nullify Vinicius, but they damn did Jude, who on the night was extremely quiet. And it's very disappointing for me because I looked at this game as almost like a little build-up between Musiala and Jude. Obviously, we know the history between the two of them together in the England youth setup. Had so many great battles against Dortmund versus Bayern. But if we're being honest here, and just like last night, Musiala has bested him in these individual matchups quite often. And of course, it's not like 1v1, right? Musiala is not looking at Bellingham and saying, oh, I'm going to dribble you, or like, oh, it's a battle between me and you. They're not fullback versus winger. It's not point guard versus... It's not like that. I get that. I'm not trying to make this out like the NBA-ification of football. Not at all. But guys, no matter what you want to say, the Champions League is about stars, and the Champions League is about two stars facing off. So when it comes to the stars facing off, we're going to look at them two in particular and say, okay, what do you guys have for me on the biggest stage? And I'm sorry, every time I've seen Musiala play in the same game as Jude, Musiala has been the better player. That's not to say I think Musiala is the better player. I have my preference, but that's not to say one is better than the other. But at some point, Jude is going to have to start holding himself accountable in these kinds of games. And you could have made the argument against when it was Dortmund versus Bayern. Okay, Bayern are the much better team. England versus Germany. Germany are the better team. We're talking about Real Madrid versus Bayern Munich here. I make the argument Real Madrid is the better team. I need to be seeing more from Jude Bellingham in these kinds of games. I looked at the City game, and you know what? I said, I can cut you some slack because first game, to be honest, I thought he was bad. I thought he was actually really bad. But the second game, big touch for the goal. You're going to be on the periphery for most of the game. I can't really expect too much from an attacking player when your team has that little of the ball. This game, I was extremely disappointed by Jude Bellingham. I thought he was on the periphery of things quite often. And look, Bellingham is very good at shielding the ball. In my opinion, that's actually one of his most underrated traits. He's exceptionally good at taking the ball down. And first of all, he's a big kid. Get the ball off me if you want. You can't do it. And then also his little touches outside of his feet, the flicks, getting people into play. He's really good at that. But Jude Bellingham was basically playing as a forward last night. And I don't always say that. Sometimes I find it kind of cringe when people try to pretend this guy's just a 9. But last night, he was playing as an attacker. He was at times the highest player in Real Madrid's setup. He was playing in a defensive shape as a striker next to Vinicius in a 4-4-2. Therefore, and I always judge Jude off this. I never judge Jude off his tackles or his work in the first phase. I've always said that's actually his weakness. Jude is an attacking player. He's an attacking midfielder. And I'm sorry, I'm not expecting goals. I'm expecting you to create chances. I'm expecting you to create threat for your team. Win the game in an offensive manner. And Jude was far too quiet last night. I can't really remember one decisive or impactful moment from Jude in an attacking sense against Bayern Munich. Where on the flip side, I watched Jamal Musiala absolutely run the show for them at times. He kind of has this Hazard trait. I'm not saying he's as good as Hazard, but he has this Hazard trait in terms of, again, it's that X factor. When your team is in a pickle, when they don't know what to do, when in build-up it's kind of failing, or when you just kind of need an out ball, he has this ability, just like Hazard did for Chelsea, where you can pass him the ball with his back facing the other goal, and 3 players can be on him. And he has this ability to pick up the ball, evade all of the pressure, relieve his team, kind of almost break the first phase of pressure from the other team, and all of a sudden his team is on the break. That all came from one guy having the individual brilliance to break that defensive shape. Most teams don't have a player like that. Most teams, they have to build up slow from the back, play out through the fullbacks, play out through a press-resistant DM. When you have a guy like that, like Hazard, like Neymar, of course, like Messi in the past, who can literally skip the build-up and say, give me the ball, I'll bring my team up the pitch. And he does that consistently 4, 5, 6 times a game. First of all, it's extremely exhausting for a player, and it's incredible how they're able to do it with such regularity, but also B, it's a cheat code. It is a tactical cheat code. Musiala, I think, for me, he's my favorite player to watch in the game. I'm a little biased here. But if I were to be completely honest, 2 things I need to see him improve on is one, which naturally I think it will improve, is his final touch. And that's not to say he doesn't score enough goals or create enough assists, because I think his numbers even last season were really, really good. But I think he can do better. I think for the amount of promising positions Musiala finds himself in, sometimes off the back of his own work, I do think his final touch can be a bit more decisive. And I think that's one area where Jude has kind of shown him up this season. But that'll come, in my opinion. B, I think at times Jamal, and it's good for him, right? Because this is one of his strengths. It's a bit of a catch-22. Like the fact Musiala plays at 100 miles an hour, and the fact he's so relentless and so direct and so like janky and unpredictable is what makes him brilliant. But I do think Musiala, and again, I think this will come with time, needs at times to slow the game down a little bit. Like sometimes it is too much head down, dribble. I think sometimes he does need to slow it down and like pick his head up and look and make a pass before another dribble. Like I think that's the one thing in his game, and I think it'll come, because I think for most players, like Foden is another example. It's taken him time to kind of learn about timing and about what they call it in Spain, la pausa. I think that's the final step in Musiala's game that needs to improve. And I think the 2 of them are interlinked, what I just said. I think him doing that will also allow him more time to kind of understand, okay, I need to shoot here, I need to pass here. And I think those numbers and that decisiveness of his final touch will come. But I do think it comes in him slowing his game down a bit. But I don't want him to do it too much, because the speed and the ferocity and the directness and the relentlessness of his dribbling is what makes him such a brilliant watch and what makes him such a devastating player. But to kind of cap off what's going to become a really good career and a really top player, I think that's the next step in which he needs to do. But forget about all that. On the night, he was brilliant. And I think Bellingham needs to look at his performance and needs to look at Musiala and say, in the second leg, I have to deliver. Because if not, look, I don't think Real Madrid can win the second leg without Jude Bellingham being at his best, or at least being close to his best. I think Real Madrid are so dependent on their best players rising to the occasion. And you may argue, okay, they have the depth to kind of replace a Bellingham. In fact, when he came off, they scored the second goal without him. But I do think Real Madrid are so reliant on their best players kind of taking the platform they're given and making the most of their skill set, that if Bellingham isn't at his best in this kind of game, it could be what separates Real Madrid from going to the final or from going out. And he's a superstar. He has earned this Ballon d'Or candidate if you want due to his play. Please deliver. Please show us why we've given you all this praise. Please prove why people are saying this is your team and not Vinicius's. I'm not trying to make it the Jude show here. Football's an 11v11 game, but this is the Champions League. I look at the stars to make the difference at this stage. I've seen Mbappe do it. I saw Haaland do it in big games last year. I've seen Vinicius do it time and time again. I saw Musiala do it last night. Jude Bellingham, not to say you're a big game fraud. I've seen you in big games dominate. I saw you twice, one in the flesh, win the El Clasico with the final kick of the ball. Next week, I need more from you. That's all I'm going to say on that front. And I expect him to, because I think with his temperament, his mentality, and his ability, I think Bellingham is capable of having an absolutely terrific game in the second leg. But he has to do it. Otherwise, questions will be asked. Like it or not, this is the Champions League. This is elite level football. Real Madrid versus Bayern is almost as elite level football as you can get. I'm expecting Bellingham to do better. I'm trying to think, is there any more talking points from this game? No, I don't think there are. I think Tuchel, Ancelotti, it's a fascinating tactical battle. Honestly, like you learned so much from the game watching these two coach, because they are so unorthodox. I loved what Cam said the other day about Tuchel being almost the modern day Rafa Benitez. It was a weird one. And when I thought about it at first, I was like, really? But then you think about the way Rafa used to coach those European knockout games with Liverpool against the likes of Chelsea, against the likes of Milan. It really was for him, how do I nullify the other team's threats? And then let's get my team up the pitch and let's get my team taking advantage of them. It is an unorthodox way of coaching, especially in today's game. Benitez, I think, did it in a time with Jose, in a time with Serral. Like, I think he did it a lot more where it was like, you saw a lot of managers managing like that. In today's game, it's very rare to see a manager like what Tuchel does in European knockouts. And it's even more rare to see someone like Ancelotti, who is a relationist sort of manager rather than a positional style. So this is a fascinating tactical matchup. Honestly, guys, like, look, for me, the goal of watching football above anything is to be entertained. This is sport. Sport is a form of entertainment. So entertain me, please. But also the tactical storylines and even the storylines between the superstars is absolutely fascinating. I think it's so delicately poised for the second leg. And to be honest with you guys, I can hardly split these two teams. Honestly, like, Faisal was really confident last night. I kept telling him, I don't think you should be. I think these two teams are really, really well balanced. I think they both have their strengths. I think they both have their weaknesses. And of course, Madrid are, for me, the better team slightly. They're the better team in terms of the talent, in terms of what they've done this season. But in terms of this matchup, they are the better team slightly, in my opinion. And the fact that they are playing at home and the fact that they are Real Madrid, I give them the advantage. But if Bellingham doesn't show up next week, I could see Bayern going through in this tie. One thing that's going to have to happen is Kim Min-jae has to have a better game than he did. But I could easily see Bayern going to the final. One thing's for sure, though, this second leg is going to be absolutely blockbuster. I can't wait for it. I know you guys can as well, too. I'll be back tomorrow with a review of PSG Dortmund. I'll be on the watch along at SDS later tonight, reacting to it with the SDS guys. We have a special guest coming, so make sure you tune into that. But yeah, Champions League this year, man. It's been an absolute treat, and I can't wait to watch more of it and react to it with you guys. So that being said, this has been my Clips channel, my review of the Real Madrid versus Bayern Munich first leg. If you like this video, like it, share, subscribe, comment down below. Who did you think were kind of like the biggest takeaways from this game, and what's your prediction for the game later tonight? With that being said, it's been your boy Lyes, and this is Lyes Clips. We'll see you when we see you. Peace.